Robert Sanchez has been slowly winning over Chelsea fans this season with a string of excellent performances and a distinct lack of anxiety-driven, crazy bozo moments and errors. But although we are only slowly starting to warm up to him, the board seem to be giving him their full back in if Fabrizio Romano's news is anything to go by. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And I had no plans to do another comparison video today, but I read this morning's news pertaining to our goalkeeping situation, and my brain was just alight with, okay, well, I've got to look into this. So today we're going to have a look at the goalkeeping news, right? So I was having my little morning ritual with my cup of tea and reading the news to see what to talk about today, and then I was faced with this. Chelsea pours interest in Maignan as Sanchez shines and Penders impresses. I was like, okay, this is worth looking into. And then obviously the first line you can see there is Fabrizio Romano. So I was like, right, okay, let's go and see what the man himself had to say about it. And then I found this tweet from yesterday. No fresh talks took place between Chelsea and Mike Maignan over a potential free transfer despite recent reports. CFC remain happy with Robert Sanchez and long-term development plan also with talented goalkeeper Mike Penders. So we've had a lot of conversations on the Blue Lounge, and we've mentioned it here a few times, and there always felt like there was this idea that we might go back in for Maignan in January, right? And it's happening again. Like, this exact thing happened with the Club World Cup, didn't it? Robert Sanchez had a phenomenal Club World Cup. Obviously, we won the trophy. And then any talk about Mike Maignan, who we only looked at before that tournament started, was put to sleep, right? It was just absolutely put to bed. They put the kibosh on it, and we went with Robert Sanchez for the rest of our season. So during this season, Robert Sanchez has had moments. One big particular moment in getting sent off, which is absolutely mad because that never happens, obviously, at the beginning of that Man United game. But in general, he has been pretty good. And like I say, Chelsea fans have slowly been warming up to him. But the conversation always felt like at the end of this season, if we want to go for a title challenge, we have to go in for a proper goalkeeper. Now, whether that be Mike Maignan or not, I don't know. But ultimately, Maignan was the only goalkeeper who was seemingly available. And also his age profile was important as well, because Mike Penders developing at Strasbourg is a huge thing. So if we go in for another younger goalkeeper, for instance, this is one of the few reasons I don't think we went in for Gigi Donnarumma, other than the 500k a week. But when you get a 30-year-old goalkeeper, then he can play for you for a few seasons. Maybe Mike Penders gets another season or two out at Strasbourg on loan, and then when he's ready, he comes in and battles for that spot, as we've seen before with Courtois when he came in and displaced Cech. But that seems to not be the case anymore. If Fabrizio Romano is to be believed, Chelsea are not looking to sign Mike Maignan and are ultimately happy to continue with Robert Sanchez until Mike Penders comes in to challenge him for that first team spot. So this got me thinking. I was like, right, okay, so if that is the case, then let's have a little look at how all three goalkeepers are doing in this season so far, compare their stats and see what the differences are. So I headed over to whoscored.com and found myself a handy little list of all of their stats from this season. So here are 12 stats, sort of, from all three of their seasons so far, and then we can take a little look at who's doing better in each situation. I've marked the important winners stats in green, but we will start with appearances. Now, I don't think appearances, I normally do this, but appearances can be a little bit arbitrary at the end of the day. Chelsea are in more competitions than AC Milan and Strasbourg, in, you know, when you consider the domestic cups in the Champions League and stuff like that, but we'll go through them anyway. So Robert Sanchez, 17 appearances this season, which puts him at number 1 for this one. Mike Maignan has only made 12 for AC Milan, and Mike Penders has made 13 for Strasbourg. Minutes played is a similar case. Robert Sanchez, 1,445 minutes. Mike Maignan, 1,046 minutes, and Mike Penders, 1,170 minutes. So what this tells us about all three of these players is they are essentially their first-team goalkeepers. Other than Rob Sanchez getting sent off in the Manchester United game, Philip Jorgensen has had basically zero chance of displacing him this season. So let's get into the stats that actually matter. And obviously the big one, clean sheets, right? 8 clean sheets for Robert Sanchez this season, which is really, really good. 6 for Mike Maignan and 5 for Mike Penders. So again, that's amazing. Don't get me wrong. 8 clean sheets in, 16 games? That's literally like a 50% clean sheet ratio, which is absolutely brilliant. Really happy with that. Maybe it's a little bit less than 50 because I think we've just played over 16 games now. But ultimately, that's a really good return from Robert Sanchez. But at the same time, he has actually played more games than Maignan and Penders. So although he wins it for that one, there's a little bit of nuance, and we'll get into that later. Goals conceded, right? Now, this is the really, really important one. And Robert Sanchez has conceded 17 goals this season to Mike Maignan's 9. Mike Penders conceded 19 goals this season as well. So as far as shot stopping goes, although that isn't necessarily the first thing that Maresca is looking for his goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez and Mike Penders nowhere close to how well Mike Maignan is doing in this particular stat. Attempted passes, this is where we start looking a little bit more at Maresca's preferred kind of goalkeeper, get involved in the build-up and all this, that and the other. Robert Sanchez has attempted 587 passes, Mike Maignan 386, and Mike Penders 566. So the Chelsea-coded goalkeepers attempting lots more passes. So what that instantly tells you is the comparison between Mike Maignan and Mike Penders is probably a little bit more important here if you think about it, because obviously they've played a similar amount of games. Rob Sanchez does come out on top, but Maignan not being asked to do that much distribution in terms of like the build-up play for AC Milan. Successful passes, again, this is where it gets really interesting. 404 successful passes for Robert Sanchez, 288 successful passes for Mike Maignan, and Mike Penders storms out in front in this one with 478 successful passes, bearing in mind he's done that in 4 less games than Robert Sanchez. So as far as distribution goes, you can see why they think Mike Penders is a really good one for the future. And we'll just back that up with the pass accuracy. Robert Sanchez has a 68.82 pass accuracy percentage, which is actually not very good. Mike Maignan, 74.61, but ultimately he's making a lot less passes. And again, Mike Penders storming out in front, 84.45% pass accuracy. Awesome. So we're going to move into long balls, and this one is also quite, these, I always say that these are all interesting, but long balls in particular is something that Sanchez has been doing a lot more of. Last season, Maresca was all about the short passing. Then Sanchez made a couple of blunders and we've started mixing it up. And Robert Sanchez's long passing has actually been a bit more of a thing, and it's something he's getting really good at. So attempted long balls, 280 attempted long balls from Robert Sanchez, 158 from Mike Maignan, 133 from Mike Penders. So to say that Mike Penders is lower than Mike Maignan in this respect, you can just see that long passing not really part of his game, especially compared to Robert Sanchez, who's managed 280 attempts. Now, when we get into accurate long balls, 102 of those from Robert Sanchez were accurate, 63 from Mike Maignan, 54 from Mike Penders. So as far as long distribution goes, Sanchez well out in front here. Discipline, really interesting one again, because not something you normally even think about with goalkeepers, is it? How often are goalkeepers getting carded and sent off? There are some things to talk about in this one. Robert Sanchez has had 1 yellow card to Mike Maignan's 0, and Mike Penders has had 3 yellow cards this season. 3! How does that even happen? That's absolutely nuts. Maybe a bit of a discipline thing there. He is very young. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look into each game about how he got those yellow cards. I can only imagine it's descent. Otherwise, what that's showing us is Mike Penders has a bit of a rash moment in him. But in terms of those stats, Mike Maignan comes out on top. Red cards. This should never happen. This should literally always be 0. But Robert Sanchez, as we all well know, has a red card this season. He got it in the Man United game, and that was a... It's difficult because it was a bozo moment, but at the end of the day, it was a tense situation. It's, you know, it's not like it happens a lot. Do you know what I mean? We haven't seen anything like it since, but keepers shouldn't be getting carded, man, and especially not red carded. Mike Maignan, Mike Penders, no red cards this season. And as far as the who scored overall rating goes, Robert Sanchez actually in last with 6.68, Mike Maignan out in front with 7.13, and Mike Penders at 6.69, just 0.01 point in front of Robert Sanchez. So this in isolation is just really interesting. So what I would say instantly is, as far as shot stopping goes, it looks like Mike Maignan's actually the best out of these 3 keepers. Mike Maignan's distribution doesn't seem to be up to scratch with either Robert Sanchez or Mike Penders. Do you know what I mean? And in terms of like stylistically, that's the kind of goalkeeper we're going for. It does make sense that we're not necessarily looking to spend the money. But some of these stats can be skewed by the amount of games played and minutes played. So I have actually whipped up another handy dandy little chart for us to look at, and we're going to look through all those stats again per 90 and see if that changes anything. So looking at their stats per 90, we'll get into it and we'll just go straight into clean sheets. Robert Sanchez, 0.5 clean sheets per 90. So 50%, that is awesome. But he was in front when we looked at this, you know, in totality, but now we look at per 90, and Mike Maignan actually comes out on top with 0.52. So he's actually per 90 minutes getting more clean sheets than Robert Sanchez is. Mike Penders trails in this one with 0.38. Clean sheets is something maybe he needs to work on. Goals conceded, this is an interesting one, but kind of plays out the same way. Robert Sanchez is conceding at 1.06 goals per game. Mike Maignan just less than 1 at 0.77, and Mike Penders 1.46 goals per game. So although Mike Penders' distribution seems to be really good, it looks like shot stopping is something he needs to work at. Attempted passes again, so this is another interesting one based on per 90 rather than looking at the stats in totality. Robert Sanchez, 36.54 attempted passes per 90. Mike Maignan, 33.17. So there was a massive disparity in the whole number before, but when you boil it down to per 90, there's not actually that much different. But Mike Penders still storms out in front with 43.54 attempted passes per 90. And again, that tells you why we're looking at him as the future goalkeeper, because distribution is going to be a really big part of the Chelsea build-up. Successful passes, again, looks like it was very skewed by the amount of appearances. So successful passes, Robert Sanchez, of the 36 he's trying, 25.14 are making it to their target. Mike Maignan just trails behind him in this respect with 24.72, and Mike Penders again storms out in front, 36.77. So what this actually tells us is Robert Sanchez's numbers are slightly inflated by the fact that he's playing so much more games, and he is a little bit in front of Mike Maignan in this respect, but not a crazy amount. And when you juxtapose that against how many less goals Mike Maignan is conceding, you think, okay, actually, that would be probably quite good for us this season. Pass accuracy obviously remains the same as it was before, so we'll move into attempted long balls. Sanchez still storms out in front per 90. This is obviously something that he really likes doing, something that really, really suits his style of play. 17.44 attempted long balls per 90 for Robert Sanchez, 13.57 for Mike Maignan, and 10.23 for Mike Penders. So Mike Penders, short passer, Robert Sanchez, long passer, Mike Maignan somewhere in between, but not quite as good as either in the distribution metrics. Things change when we look at that accuracy though. So 6.35 accurate long balls of the 17 per game. So technically Robert Sanchez is still out in front, but again, that's likely inflated by the amount he's making. But Mike Maignan with 5.42, bearing in mind he makes 3 less passes per 90, he's only actually misplacing 1 less than Robert Sanchez is. So Maignan's accuracy and efficiency with long balls is actually probably slightly better than Rob Sanchez's when you think about how many they're making. And not terrible when you consider Mike Penders is attempting 7 less long balls than Sanchez is per 90. To be getting 4 of those, do you know what I mean? That's not too bad. And then we've got the cards, and those are the important stats, and obviously the ratings stay the same, the cards stay the same. So I just think this makes for interesting reading, right? Because what it does tell us is Mike Maignan is actually in front of both of these keepers as of right now in terms of shot stopping, right? Shot stopping is really, really, really important. Robert Sanchez has conceded a bucket of goals. Mike Penders has conceded a bucket of goals, and Mike Maignan has only conceded 9 goals in 12 appearances this season. So that is actually really good. But it is ultimately the distribution that we want to be looking at, isn't it? So you got to think, man, Robert Sanchez's short passing and long ball attempts specifically are well in front of Mike Maignan, and Mike Penders is storming out in front. Ultimately, it's one of those, like, is there a huge amount of point in going in for Mike Maignan if conceding goals isn't something that Maresca's worried about? Now, the other factor to consider about this, right, is if you think about it recently, obviously, since we've had Trevor Chalobah and Wesley Fofana playing, we've also been conceding less goals. So yes, Robert Sanchez has conceded a lot of goals, but since we've started putting out a consistent centre-back pairing, that has stopped happening nearly quite as much as well. So ultimately, Strasbourg and AC Milan's defences have been a lot more settled than ours this season. We've had 8 different centre-back pairings this season, which is absolutely mad. Like, in no season should you, 2 or 3, okay, depending on, the odd competition and the odd injury here or there, but 8 different centre-back pairings tells you that for the large part of the beginning of the season, Maresca was experimenting with his back line, and Robert Sanchez is going to suffer from that. So although these are the stats now, if Wesley Fofana manages to stay fit and keeps on playing with Trevor Chalobah, it'll be interesting to see what those stats look like a few more months into the season. So guys, it looks like it's going to happen again, man. Robert Sanchez's performances of late seem to have dissuaded Blueco for going in for Mike Maignan, and ultimately looks like we're going to see Robert Sanchez in the sticks until Mike Penders is ready to come in. Now, the big question is going to be, is that going to be at the end of this season, or does Mike Penders stay out of Strasbourg for another season and we keep Robert Sanchez as our number 1? Sanchez's distribution stats are improving. In terms of short passing, he's definitely getting better. Long balls, he actually is clearly the best of the 3 that we're looking at in general. So Maresca's figured out a way to kind of factor that into our play, especially when we play the big teams. So guys, I need to know what you think about this in the comments, right? Is Mike Maignan's better stats pertaining to shot stopping a good enough reason? And I say that, obviously there's the defence thing to bear in mind as well, but is that a good enough reason to sell Sanchez at the end of the season, bring Mike Maignan in as the number 1, maybe bring Penders in the number 2, or let Penders develop at Strasbourg for another season? Penders clearly needs to improve his shot stopping, man. That's the thing at the moment. So his distribution really, really good. Short passing, he is probably up there in world football, actually. That's something I'll look into in another video. But those short passing stats and accuracy is absolutely brilliant for such a young goalkeeper. His long balls are quite low, especially compared to the other two when you think about it. But maybe that is a stylistic thing. Maybe that's not something he's being asked to do by manager Liam Rosinia. But as we can see, in a lot of these games we've won against the big teams, Robert Sanchez actually, his long balls and his long distribution has been really important in starting attacks. So although Mike Penders is doing really well out of Strasbourg at the moment, there are two obvious areas for improvement, and that's his long distribution and his shot stopping. But forgetting about Penders for a second and just bringing it straight back to Sanchez versus Maignan, Sanchez's distribution is better. Maignan currently his shot stopping is better. I would be interested to see by the end of the season whether that has changed a little bit with our defence being a little bit more, consistent. But ultimately, those are the stats as they are right now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you very much for sticking around until the end of the video if you did. If you are chilling, you got a tasty beverage and you want to listen to me, the Stamford Sink, ramble about some more football comparisons, then I urge you to check out this video here, which is another stat battle or stattle comparing Giovanni Quenda of Sporting Lisbon, who is also a Chelsea asset, to our very own young superstar Esteval Willian, and their comparative stats this season so far. Nice one, guys. I hope you're having an absolutely wicked day. Take it easy. Peace.